After the civil war that led to the extinction of the dragons, and after some very bad kings ruled over the Seven Kingdoms, it seemed like the rule of House Targaryen was coming to a close. The house was divided by another civil war, and the general opinion about them was very poor. We saw in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms that many people viewed the Targaryens as an incestuous alien race. It's safe to say that things were not looking good for them. But despite all of these problems, there was still hope for the dynasty that conquered Westeros, and that hope was called Baelor Targaryen. Everyone expected that he would be the one to restore the glory of House Targaryen, but unfortunately he lost his life during Dunk's Trial of Seven. In the series, we only got to see Baelor for a short period of time, but even that limited screen time clearly showed why there were such high hopes for him. That's why in today's video we're going to talk about all the clues that Baelor would have made an excellent king. Baelor is the definition of nobility, and his true power was his way of earning the respect and trust of others through his actions. Tywin Lannister, for example, commanded respect through fear. Robert Baratheon commanded respect through brute force. Baelor's way was through his character. Even though we only saw him briefly on screen, this was perfectly clear. We are first introduced to Baelor in Episode 2, when he is greeted by the Lord of Ashford. You can see the way Baelor greets him, with a genuine smile and a friendly tap on his shoulder. It felt like an interaction between two old friends. He wasn't arrogant, he wasn't entitled, he was chivalrous and kind, even though he didn't have to be. House Ashford is a small house from the Reach. They don't even rule the region, so Baelor could have easily treated the meeting as nothing more than a royal duty, and finished it quickly. Just look at his brother's behavior when they arrive, rolling his eyes and acting cold. Of course, we can't fully blame him. His two sons were missing and potentially dead, so he had bigger concerns than properly greeting a minor lord. But these small gestures are what set Baelor apart from the rest of the Targaryens. Let's analyze his character further in the scene where Dunk is caught spying on them. Maekar immediately goes on the offensive, demanding answers. But Baelor remains calm and assertive. He reminds his brother that they were the intruders there, and he addresses Dunk respectfully. "Come closer, sir." We can already see the level of respect he shows Dunk. From the way Dunk was dressed and the way he spoke, it was clear he wasn't from a noble family. Yet the heir to the throne treated him with dignity. That's not something we were used to seeing from Targaryens. When we compare him to Aerion breaking Toncel's fingers over a puppet show, or Maekar constantly swearing and reacting aggressively, we can clearly see how Baelor stands apart. But the brilliance of this scene doesn't end there. After Dunk finishes telling his story, Baelor doesn't immediately react. He waits. He understands that this isn't his court and not his decision to make. Even though he is the heir to the throne, and his word carries weight everywhere, he chooses not to intervene. This is Lord Ashford's castle, and he should be the one to decide what to do with Dunk. Lord Ashford had already expressed his displeasure, saying that shield and sword do not make a knight, implying that Dunk having them doesn't qualify him. From Baelor's body language, it's clear he wasn't planning to interfere. In his mind, the decision had already been made by Lord Ashford. Baelor only takes initiative after Dunk directly asks him if he remembers Sir Arlan. And then he shocks everyone by actually remembering him. I was amazed by how beautifully he spoke about Sir Arlan. He never won a tourney that I know, but he never shamed himself either. With this sentence, Baelor didn't just acknowledge Sir Arlan. He proved that he truly knew him. It wasn't just a name he had heard once, he had real information. Even his brother was shocked that he could remember a mere hedge knight from 16 years ago. Baelor then delivers what I think is one of the greatest qualities a king could have. "I made it a practice to learn what I can of my foes." This line might seem insignificant at first, almost like common sense, but it actually matters a great deal, especially for the Targaryens. They were never used to having their power threatened. They had dragons. They ruled Westeros for centuries. We've seen countless examples of their reckless behavior. So, having a Targaryen who studies his enemies speaks volumes about Baelor. It shows he would have been a great politician. Baelor understands the current situation of the realm. This is best shown during Aerion's first duel at the tourney. Baelor immediately recognizes that Aerion's actions would only further damage the already fragile Targaryen reputation. He knows the Blackfyre threat isn't truly gone. Even though he won the battle that ended the rebellion, the repercussions remain. Targaryen power is no longer what it once was. Baelor knows he must understand his enemies. That's why he studies them, to the point where he can remember the name of a hedge knight from 16 years ago. Baelor remembering Sir Arlen isn't just courtesy, it's actually a formidable trait. Another great quality he displays is when Dunk corrects his story, saying it was 7 lances instead of 4. Without realizing it, Dunk directly contradicts the hand of the king, essentially calling him a liar. Everyone in the room understands how dangerous that could be. Maekar even starts laughing. If it had been any other noble, Dunk might have lost his tongue right there. But Baelor understands that Dunk isn't mocking him. He's simply repeating what his beloved master told him. Baelor immediately diffuses the situation. He doesn't call Dunk or Sir Arlen liars. Instead, he says, "Tales grow in the telling, I know. Do not think ill of your master, but it was only 4, I'm afraid." What a brilliant choice of words. Tales grow in the telling acknowledges how legends become exaggerated over time. By starting with this phrase, Baelor subtly places himself among those legendary figures whose stories are often embellished. Do not think ill of your master shows respect for Dunk's loyalty, and gently explains why Dunk might be mistaken. It was only 4, I am afraid. Calmly reinforces that Baelor is correct. Without humiliation, without anger, without arrogance. What a masterful way to diffuse the situation. This scene showcases Baelor's diplomacy at the highest level. And with that kind of diplomacy, the kingdom would have prospered. With only the first scene we had with Baelor, we could already see why so many people had high hopes for his reign. But we have even more proof that suggests Baelor would have been a great king. I think the scene that made him everyone's favorite was when he sided with Dunk during the Trial of 7. It showed that he knew what the right thing to do was, and that he was even willing to stand against his own family to uphold it. This immediately won the public over. We can see the ovation he receives. But Baelor wasn't naive, nor was he blindly attached to honor the way Ned Stark was. Baelor was actually very cunning. He was capable of using the rules to his advantage. Like when he confronted the Kingsguard during the Trial of 7, knowing they couldn't possibly harm him because of their vows. As much as we would like to believe that a king should always be purely honest and earnest, the reality is that he needs to use these kinds of tactics more often than he would want to. For me, Baelor's actions during the Trial of 7 prove he had the qualities of a great king. He was honorable enough to do what was right, but not so naive that he would cling to honor if it put him at a disadvantage. Up until this point, Baelor proved himself to be a great politician and an excellent diplomat. He had a wide range of knowledge about what was happening in the kingdom. And as Littlefinger famously said, knowledge is power. We also see Baelor standing firmly for what is right. With only these qualities, we could already argue that he would have been a great king. But there is an even more important piece of information that wasn't fully explored in the show. Baelor's nickname was Breakspear, and he earned it after defeating Demon Blackfyre in a tourney. As you may know, Demon Blackfyre was the very reason the Blackfyre Rebellion began, and he was considered one of the greatest fighters in the realm. I have separate videos about this topic because I don't want to make this one longer than necessary. But the reason the rebellion ultimately failed was because the rebels lost at the Battle of the Redgrass Field. And one of the main reasons for that defeat was the strategy devised by Baelor and Maekar. Up until Baelor took command of the king's army, the rebels had the upper hand. They had almost won several major engagements. The tide of the war only changed when Baelor assumed leadership. And what's even more impressive than delivering the final blow to the rebellion is how he did it. Baelor's unit was made up of Stormlords and Dornishmen, 2 historic enemies. In fact, a major reason the rebellion started was resentment toward Dornish influence at court. By commanding 2 sworn enemies under one banner, Baelor didn't just display incredible tactical prowess. He demonstrated immense charisma and leadership. He managed to unite 2 hostile factions and make them fight effectively together. After the rebellion, Baelor became Hand of the King, and it was implied many times that he performed exceptionally well in that role. When you really think about it, Baelor wasn't just a promising prince, he was the king the 7 kingdoms needed. At a time when House Targaryen was divided, hated, and weakened, Baelor had everything. Honor without naivety, intelligence without arrogance, strength without cruelty. He understood politics. He studied his enemies. He united historic rivals, and he wasn't afraid to stand for what was right, even against his own blood. He had the mind of a ruler and the heart of a true leader, And that's what makes his death so tragic, because Baelor Breakspear isn't remembered for his reign. He's remembered for the king he never got to become.